Hey everyone, so it's late 2025 and you're probably trying to figure out your next iPhone move. And honestly, the options are a bit confusing. On one hand, we've got the iPhone 12 Pro Max. This thing was a top tier flagship and now you can find it for, a really tempting price, somewhere around $350. On the other hand, there's the iPhone 15 Pro. It's still a modern powerhouse, but even used, it's gonna cost you a fair bit more, probably in the ballpark of $600 to $700. The price gap is pretty big, but is the performance and experience gap just as wide? That's what we're gonna figure out today. In this video, we're gonna go through everything that actually matters. We'll talk about how they feel to hold and use every day, the screens, the real world performance, not just benchmarks, battery life, the cameras, and of course the big one, the new iOS 26 and what it's like using a phone that doesn't get Apple's latest AI features. By the end, you should have a much clearer idea of which one of these makes sense for you. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, I think it's important to remember what made these phones a big deal. The 12 Pro Max, man, this was a huge shift for Apple back in 2020. It brought back these iconic flat sides, which every iPhone since has basically followed. It was the first Pro Max to get 5G, the first with this MagSafe system, the first to pack 6 GB of RAM, which was a big deal for multitasking at the time, and it introduced this LiDAR scanner for better portraits and AR. A lot of what it introduced is still standard today. Then you have the 15 Pro from 2023. This was all about refinement. It was the first iPhone with this strong but much lighter titanium frame. It swapped the classic mute switch for this customizable action button, and maybe the biggest deal for a lot of people, it finally moved to USB-C. Under the hood, it had the A17 Pro chip, the first 3nm chip in a smartphone, which Apple said would bring console-level gaming to your pocket. But they weren't perfect. The 12 Pro Max was, and still is, stuck with a 60Hz screen, which even in 2020 felt a little dated. And the 15 Pro, well, a lot of people, myself included, have had some questions about its long-term battery health, which we'll definitely get into. Okay, let's talk about how these phones actually feel. The 12 Pro Max is substantial. It's built with this polished stainless steel, and at 228 grams, you feel it. It's a premium, dense phone. The 15 Pro, on the other hand, with its titanium build, is shockingly light at 187 grams. It's actually lighter than the smaller 12 Pro was. The edges are also slightly contoured, which makes it way more comfortable to hold than the sharp, flat edges of the 12 series. It's a huge quality of life improvement. Now, the displays are where you see one of the biggest, most immediate differences. The 12 Pro Max has a big, beautiful 6.7-inch OLED screen. It's sharp, colors are great, but it's 60 Hz. And in late 2025, you feel it. It's not slow, but it's just not fluid. The 15 Pro has a smaller 6.1-inch display, but it's a 120 Hz ProMotion screen. Scrolling, swiping, animations, everything is just buttery smooth. For me, going back to 60 Hz feels like a definite step down. The 15 Pro also gets way brighter outdoors, hitting 2000 nits compared to the 1200 on the 12 Pro Max, which makes a real difference in direct sunlight. And then there's the top of the screen. You've got the classic notch on the 12 Pro Max versus the dynamic island on the 15 Pro. Honestly, you get used to both, but the dynamic island is genuinely useful for live activities, timers, music. It adds a layer of functionality that the static notch just doesn't have. Alright, performance. The 12 Pro Max is running the A14 Bionic chip, and the 15 Pro has the A17 Pro. For everyday stuff, scrolling, texting, browsing, the 12 Pro Max is still surprisingly good. Apps open pretty quickly and swiping around is mostly smooth, but it's not as instantaneous as the 15 Pro. There's just a slight hesitation here and there that you don't get on the newer phone. The Geekbench scores I ran kind of back this up. The 12 Pro Max got around 2,180 single-core and 5,242 multi-core. The 15 Pro hit 2,829 and 7,272. So yeah, there's a measurable difference, but in daily use, the A14 is still very, very capable. Where I feel the age of the 12 Pro Max the most is multitasking. This was the first Pro iPhone with 6 GB of RAM. The 15 Pro has 8 GB. And with how demanding apps have gotten by late 2025, that 2 GB difference is noticeable. On the 12 Pro Max, if I'm jumping between a few heavy apps like a game, my photo editor, and a browser with a bunch of tabs, apps will often have to reload when I switch back to them. On the 15 Pro with its 8 GB of RAM, things just stay in memory longer. It's a smoother, less frustrating experience if you're a heavy user. When it comes to gaming, both phones can still play demanding titles. I play a lot of PUBG Mobile. On the 15 Pro, I can crank all the settings up, and it's a great experience. It does get warm after a while, maybe an hour or so, but performance stays solid. On the 12 Pro Max, it's still very playable, but I do see some frame drops, especially in intense moments. And it gets warm, like noticeably more warm than the 15 Pro. The A14 is still a beast, but the A17 Pro's GPU is just on another level, especially with its support for things like hardware-accelerated ray tracing, which enables true console-quality games that the 12 Pro Max just can't run. Battery life is a complicated one. As I mentioned, this 12 Pro Max has a pretty fresh battery. I had it replaced early this year and it's at 95% health. With this new battery, it's a solid all-day phone for my kind of backup usage. It easily gets me through a day of testing and casual use. My 15 Pro, which is my daily driver, is at 87% health after over 450 charge cycles since I got it in November 2023. It also gets me through a full day, but just barely sometimes, especially on heavy days. There's a lot of talk online about the 15 Pro's battery degrading a bit faster than previous models, and my experience seems to line up with that. I will say the new adaptive power feature in iOS 26 seems to have helped a little bit, but it's not a night and day difference. And then there's the port. The 12 Pro Max has Lightning, the 15 Pro has USB-C. In late 2025, this matters. Almost all my other gear, my laptop, my iPad, my headphones, charges with USB-C. Being able to use one cable for everything with the 15 Pro is just so convenient. With the 12 Pro Max, I always have to remember to pack a Lightning cable, and it's not just about convenience. The USB-C port on the 15 Pro supports USB 3 speeds, which are up to 20 times faster than the USB 2.0 speeds you get over Lightning. If you ever need to transfer large video files off your phone, it's a huge time saver. The cameras are where you see some really big leaps. The 12 Pro Max has a great triple 12 megapixel system. In good light, it still takes fantastic photos. But the 15 Pro system is just more advanced. It has a 48 megapixel main sensor that by default shoots these incredibly detailed 24 megapixel photos. The sensor is bigger, it lets in more light, and thanks to the newer photonic engine, the detailed dynamic range, and especially the low light performance are noticeably better. Photos from the 15 Pro just have more information and look cleaner, especially when you zoom in. For zoom, my 12 Pro Max has a 2.5x optical telephoto lens. My 15 Pro has a 3x optical telephoto. Now it's important to note the 15 Pro Max model has a 5x zoom. I've read a lot of forum discussions about it and the opinions are mixed. Some people love the extra reach, while others find it a bit soft unless the lighting is perfect. So this review applies to both Pro models, but just know the Max gets you that extra reach. For my 15 Pro, the 3x is a really versatile length for portraits and the quality is excellent. It's a solid, reliable step up from the 2.5x on the 12 Pro Max. Video is another area where the 15 Pro pulls ahead. Both shoot great 4K video, but the 15 Pro gets access to features like 4K cinematic mode, which gives you that nice shallow depth of field effect, action mode that makes your shaky video stable, and ProRes video for professional workflows. These are features that are completely missing on the 12 Pro Max. Okay, software, this is a big one. Both of these phones are running the latest public release of iOS 26, and I have to say, Apple did a fantastic job this year. The whole OS feels more fluid, there are these new liquid glass animations that are really slick, and a lot of old bugs have been squashed. On both phones, it runs great. But here's the catch. The iPhone 12 Pro Max does not get Apple Intelligence. And the reason is a mix of the A14 chip's neural engine and more importantly, the fact that it only has 6 GB of RAM. Apple's on-device AI models require at least 8 GB of RAM to run effectively, which is why the 15 Pro is the oldest Pro model to get it. So all the new smart writing tools, image generation, and the super advanced Siri, they're not here on the 12 Pro Max. Now, honestly, for me right now in late 2025, this is not a deal breaker. And here's why. Apple Intelligence is still pretty new. You know, it's still kind of in its early stages, almost like a public beta. For the heavy lifting AI stuff, I usually find myself using more mature alternatives anyway, like Gemini or ChatGPT, which work perfectly fine on the 12 Pro Max through their apps. So while you miss out on the deep system integration, you're not completely cut off from powerful AI tools. It's something to consider for the future, but today I don't think it's a reason to immediately dismiss this phone. So after all that, which one should you get? Let's break it down. The iPhone 12 Pro Max is a 5-year-old flagship that honestly holds up way better than you might expect. The performance is still solid for daily use, the camera is great in good light, and with a new battery, it's a reliable device. Its main drawbacks are the 60Hz screen and the lack of future-facing features like Apple Intelligence. The iPhone 15 Pro is a modern, refined powerhouse. It's light and comfortable. The 120Hz screen is a joy to use, the performance is top tier, the camera is more versatile, and it has USB-C and Apple Intelligence. Its main downside is the higher price and some questions around long-term battery health. So here's my recommendation. For the budget-conscious buyer, if you're looking for the best bang for your buck and your budget is around, say, $350, the iPhone 12 Pro Max is a fantastic deal. As long as you're okay with a 60Hz screen and not having the latest AI features, you're getting a huge premium-feeling phone with a capable camera for a fraction of its original cost. For the current 12 Pro Max user, if you're using a 12 Pro Max right now and you're wondering if you should upgrade, I'd say the upgrade to a 15 Pro or 15 Pro Max is significant. The jump to 120Hz, the lighter design, and the better camera are all things you'll notice every single day. But if your 12 Pro Max is still running fine and meeting your needs, it's probably not an essential upgrade just yet. You could easily wait another year. For the power user enthusiast. And finally, if you want a more modern, future-proof device and your budget is in the $600 to $700 range for a used phone, the iPhone 15 Pro is the obvious choice. You're getting a much faster, more capable, and more comfortable phone that will continue to get all of Apple's major software features for years to come. Just be sure to check the battery health if you're buying one used. So that's my take on these two phones in late 2025. Two very different options at two very different price points. I'd love to know what you think. Which one would you pick? Let me know down in the comments. As always, thanks so much for watching.